Kia ora and welcome to 5 Strategies to Grow Your Community Group Through Effective Promotion. I'm Sue Cardwell. I'm a very experienced marketer and communications person. I've sat in just about every seat in the marketing comms department, from brand to digital to communications and PR, in a whole range of different industries. I'm personally very passionate about climate action, and that's how I've ended up in the nonprofit space. And I'm really keen to see other community-focused organizations make the most of their effort spent promoting their cause. And hopefully together we can collaborate to make the world a better place. What we'll cover today: the why, communicating your cause in everything that you do. The who, getting really clear on who we're trying to speak to and making sure that we speak to them directly. The what, creating your content so it's effective, but also so you can be really efficient about how you do that, because we all have not as much time as we would like to spend on this stuff. The where, which channels are you going to be active on and how can you get the most out of them? Finally, amplifying your efforts. Where are the multipliers? Where are the things that are going to make this practical, sustainable, and really effective for us? And some bonus content at the end, learning from your results. How can you take what you've achieved in the past and apply it to make things better in the future? Before we start, let's take a moment to think about what's hot and what's not whenever you are working to promote your community groups activities. What's your favorite thing about it? Are there things about it that you really hate? Take a moment to think about your own preferences, your aptitudes, the skills and experiences you bring to the table. You have a secret sauce whenever you're doing it that no one else has. And some of those are going to inform the sorts of strategies you might want to take on as we go through this workshop. Feel free to pause the video here and think about that for a moment. This is going to be a really active workshop. You're going to be doing a lot of the work. And our first activity is the 20-year plan. This is to get us out of thinking in a day-to-day sense and get us into kind of thinking big picture about what we're trying to achieve. I want you to scribble out this timeline on a piece of paper or perhaps on a device if that's what you prefer. You've got 5 dates there: 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and 20 years. I want you to make your predictions for your community group for all 4 dates. It gets a little more challenging as you go down the timeline. Go ahead and pause the video now while you work on this exercise. How did you get on? If you have the opportunity, discuss your predictions with a colleague or a friend. Challenge each other on them. Which predictions do you like best? Which ones energize you? This is really good for scene setting as we go into the next exercises. The why, communicating your cause. Vision and values can be words that really turn people off sometimes, whereas to other people, they mean a huge amount. Think about your group. Are your vision and values written down? Can you recall them off the top of your head? Do written down visions and or values matter? How do your vision and values differ from similar organizations? To me, vision and values are a key part of your brand and what makes you unique in how you communicate. Now, brand can mean a huge number of different things beyond just your logo, your visual appearance. One way of thinking about the different elements of brand is your brand core, your brand positioning, and your brand persona. So your brand core would be things like your purpose, your vision, your values. And how those might show up would be your topics would always support your purpose. your tone would always reflect your values. Your brand positioning would be things like who you're trying to target, the need that they have that you're trying to fulfill, and the goals that your organization has. And whenever you would see that showing up, it would be in people showing interest in what you're sharing. The right kind of people that you're trying to target are engaging with your communications. You can tell that you're meeting that need for them. And then your brand persona would be perhaps the things we most typically think of as brand. So it would be your brand personality. It might be your visual appearance. It might be your brand voice, the sort of language that you use, whether it's casual or formal, for example. It might be your tagline. And the way that shows up is that people feel like they know you because you speak with a consistent voice. So let's have a look at an example. You really want to make the most of your audience's connection to your purpose. And the one you can see on screen here is Badminton Oceania have said, plenty of support for the Badminton Cook Islands players at the Zespri Ames Games School Sporting Championships. It's a nice post. Here's how I would have done it. Badminton Oceania's brand vision tagline is badminton for all, sport for all for life. And I would have said something like, thrilled to see the plentiful support for Badminton Cook Islands players at the Zespri Ames Games School Sporting Championships. It's a landmark moment for Badminton Cook Islands as representation grows among young people in the region. So it's taking, hey, this happened, and connecting it to what we're trying to achieve. And then including the hashtag as well, just to remind people, hey, this is the big vision that we're trying to get to. Your turn. So first of all, let's have a think about your brand personality. On the screen here, you can see 5 different continuums of brand. So on the top row, for example, you've got elite versus wide appeal. And I've put in a couple of examples that I think might represent those extremes. Serious versus playful, conventional versus rebel, friend versus authority, mature, classic versus young and innovative. And I want you to take your brand and think about where they sit on each of these lines. Take a moment to pause the video now and have a go. How did you get on? Now it's time to try and actually use that in a piece of communication. So take something that you have shared or published recently. It could be a newsletter, it could be a social media post, it could be an article. And I want you just to make a couple of little tweaks, make some changes to better show your brand's unique personality. If you haven't got any recent content, don't worry. Here's one of mine that you can have a go at improving. Feel free to pause your video for a moment while you work on this and then come back to the recording. We're moving on now to the who, also known as your target audience. I want you, by the end of this workshop, to be really clear on who you are and aren't speaking to. Why does this matter? Because if you don't know, they won't know that you're speaking to them. Whenever you have a really clear idea in your head, you're not trying to target just anybody. You've got an idea of who's going to be receiving this message. You speak with authority, clarity, and you're really, really direct about meeting their needs. So have a think about the characteristics of your main target audience. I want you to think about demographics. So that's things like age, gender, where they live, all of those sorts of things. Psychographics, a little bit less well known. Those are things like their values, their interests, how they identify. So it might be things like, do they identify as Pacifica, for example? Do they identify as part of the rainbow community? Do they identify as progressive or conservative? That kind of thing. And have a think about their behaviors. So where might you see these people? What sort of things do they do at the weekend? That kind of thing. It can also be really helpful to write down the opposite of this, who you're not targeting. Sometimes that's actually easier to do. Take a moment to pause the video here and write some notes. By now, you've got a really good description in front of you of who you're trying to target. And as you start thinking about this more and more, you'll gradually refine that understanding over the weeks to come. Now I want you to have a think about putting this into practice. How could you call out to your audience in your communications? There are times when, as communicators, we do this quite directly. For example, you could start a social post with the phrase, "Do you live in East Auckland? If so, you need to know about this." Or you could do it more subtly by referring to some of their interests, or "Have you ever had this experience?" That kind of thing. Again, take a recent piece of content that you've published and have a go. Think about how you could call out to your audience, either subtly or directly, in that piece of content. If you don't have one, here's one that we've published recently, and you can use that as your example. Feel free to pause the video here until you've completed this exercise. How did you get on with speaking to your audience? Do you think it improved your communication? Hopefully you ended up with something that would really stand out to your target audience and make them stop scrolling and look straight at your piece of content. Now, our activity is getting into the real nitty-gritty. We're going to have a go at writing a purpose statement. You may have one of these already, and that's absolutely fine too. It's an exercise that's worth doing regardless. The question here is, what need are you meeting for your target audience? Purpose statements include your organization name, your contribution, and then something like a "so that" statement. So we're doing this so that this impact can happen. They also usually mention who you're doing it for. Don't worry about getting it perfect. If you know that your organization already has one of these, don't look it up. Just see if you can write one off the top of your head. I've included a couple of examples here to make it clearer what we're talking about as a purpose statement, but feel free to go completely off script as well. It doesn't have to be like these. Pause the video here until you've had a go at jotting something down. And again, don't worry about getting it perfect. A really rough first pass is all we need for this exercise. So how's your purpose statement? Is it inspiring? Does it feel a bit rough around the edges? Either way, it doesn't matter. It's going to help you with the exercise to come. So think about the same social post or piece of content as you used before, or a new one if you prefer. Think about how you could add purpose into that piece of content. So if you don't have a recent piece of content, I've included one here that you can have a look at and see if you can add something to. Have a think about whether you could do that in the main copy, in the image, maybe with hashtags. Have a real think about all the different ways that you could really incorporate it in there, more or less subtly. Pause the video here until you've had a chance to give it a go. We're moving on to the bit you've all been waiting for, the what. What can you post? What's going to be most effective? What are some of the great ideas that you can use? Our activity here is going to be to create a new content type, one that you're not used to working in. And I'm really keen that you get out of your comfort zone here as much as you're comfortable doing so, because this is a great place to practice and try some new things. Now, when we think about our content, and we're thinking about our audience, of course, but we want to think about them on a new dimension as well, and that is what's usually called the marketing funnel. It's a funnel that goes from the very top. It's completely unaware of your group, through to aware, through to considering getting involved with you in some way, considering perhaps being a follower on social media, through to being a supporter, so they've maybe signed up for your newsletter or something like that, through to being an absolute advocate, and that might be your volunteers, your committee members, your board members, if you have those. So everyone could be somewhere on this funnel. It's not a one-way funnel. People can go up and down the funnel depending on what's going on for them in their lives. But our goal is usually to try and persuade people to kind of move down this funnel. And whenever we create content, we might be thinking about reaching out to people who've never even heard of us, which is a completely different challenge compared to talking to people at the other end of the funnel, supporters, advocates. We might talk in a completely different way. Have a little think about some of the considerations that might be different if you were talking, say, to your volunteers versus people out there who don't know anything about you. Did you come up with some good ideas? Yeah, I'm sure you thought of things like, if someone doesn't know you, you need to take a little bit longer to explain what you do. If someone's a supporter, they're already probably quite familiar with the kind of language that you use, the kind of concepts that you communicate, and you can go a little more in depth. So with those audiences in mind, have a think about how you could change up your content to appeal to a part of the funnel that you don't normally talk to, in a way that you don't normally talk. So you may do some of these kinds of content that you can see here already. You may have tried them all. But take one that you don't do very often or you haven't done for a long time, and think about the part of the funnel that you don't talk to as much, whether that's completely unaware or whether it's actually your committed supporters, that sort of end of the funnel. I want you to get out of your comfort zone and do ones that you don't normally do for the purpose of this practice. And choose one of these and sketch out an idea for a piece of content. Pause the video now while you give that a go. Did you come up with a great piece of content? I would love to see it. Let's have a think about where it's going to go and how you're going to get through to your audience. So by where, I mean not just the channel, but also posting on the channel at the right time, and also making sure it's the right kind of message for that channel. And so sometimes you might be surprised by the sorts of things that can be successful in different channels. First of all, have a think about the channels that you do use today. There could be more of them than come immediately to mind, so take a moment to think about it. Have a think about why you use those channels and give them a little assessment in your mind. How are they working for you? I'm going to share with you the most used social media platforms in New Zealand. Now, this is all New Zealanders, all adult New Zealanders. It may not reflect the profile of who you are trying to target. But with that caveat in mind, there are some numbers here that may surprise you if you haven't seen them before. Facebook, despite the fact that it's being used less than it used to be, is still extremely prevalent. Instagram is quite close behind. It's bigger than it used to be. And then you've got this long tail of different platforms. They're certainly proliferating. Lots of options for communicators to use, but some of them are quite small. And things like X are getting smaller and smaller, while other platforms are getting bigger and bigger. One that surprised me off this chart was just how big Reddit is in New Zealand, for example. And it's quite a high engagement platform as well. Outside of social media, there are a whole bunch more different channels that you could be using. Many of you may have email lists and be communicating that way. Some of you will have a website. You may even be considering the audio channels, so podcasting, communicating on radio. So, for example, community radio like Planet FM, or you may have a good opening in a local paper or local radio station to be on there regularly communicating as well. All of these are fantastic if you have the right skill sets to be able to make them work, and perhaps the right connections as well. I'm not going to tell you which platform is right for you. I will make a couple of little comments. Unless your organization's role is creating content, make sure you are selective about what you get into. So things like community radio can be very affordable and really effective for certain groups, but it's a huge amount of work as well. I would say kind of a similar thing about websites. It can seem like a great idea to be able to kind of own your own platform like that. It's great for, brand credibility, but it does come with a lot of associated costs and maintenance tasks that need to be done. If you're a technical expert and can do them yourself, great. And you may be able to save some costs that other people might incur. Fantastic. But just do go into it eyes wide open. Your next activity is going to be flexing a piece of content for a different platform. So we don't talk in the same way on every platform. If we're publishing on Facebook, we probably are not going to publish exactly the same thing on TikTok, for example. We may not publish exactly the same thing on LinkedIn, but there's usually a way of taking a piece of content and dialing up the aspects that are going to work for a different platform. I want you to take a piece of your recent content, either the same one you've been working with before or a different one, and work out how it could be recycled for a completely different platform. And really stretch yourself here into something that you've always thought about doing, but maybe have never tried. If you don't have a piece of content to hand, here's one that you can use. Pause the video here until you've given it a go. You can just write down a few notes about how you would tackle it. Did you come up with some good ideas? I would love to see them. A question I always get asked at this stage is, how often should I post? And the answer is probably, how long is a piece of string? I think we need to acknowledge that posting on social media, or even getting email newsletters out there, getting new content up on websites, it's all time consuming, it's all hard. And we need to ask ourselves, what is realistic and sustainable for your organization? That said, there are some tricks and tips that can help. My favorite one is banking content. So every time you have an idea for a piece of content, get it onto your ideas list. Get your ideas list up on your wall and just jot it down quickly, because there'll be times when you're struggling for an idea. If you have a chance to create content in a quieter week, but you've actually already got 3 great pieces of content out that week, keep it for another week unless it's time sensitive. That's what I mean by banking content. Keep it in your back pocket so you've got an opportunity to fill a quiet moment later on. If you're really struggling for the time to create something, what have you got in the archives? There's usually a whole bunch of content people haven't seen at all before or haven't seen for a long time that's still really relevant today. So please do make use of that great content. Don't let it hide in an archive somewhere. If you really need an answer on the how often, my rule of thumb is you probably need to be out there at least once a week. Ideally, it would be once per day, but for a group that's quite small, that could be difficult. But if you are going to be publishing just relatively infrequently, make sure it's consistent, and think really carefully about your timing. So don't just kind of do that classic thing we all do. Oh, I've got this great thing. Finally, I've got something wonderful to publish, and put it straight out there, even though it's maybe like 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. Schedule it. Make sure that it's going out at a time when people are on the channel that you're reaching out to. So if it's Facebook or Instagram, you're maybe going to get a bit more pickup at 7 p.m. than you are at 3 p.m. You might find that people engage more with your content at the weekend, or you might find that weekday mornings are actually your hot time. Take a look at what's worked in the past and make sure you're getting bang for your buck with your content by scheduling it at a time that works for your audience. Okay, let's get on to the fun stuff. Amplifiers. One of my favorite amplifiers is letting local media know what you've been up to. Perhaps someone's won an award recently, perhaps you've done something really cool in the local community, or you've got an event coming up that you think more people need to hear about. Whatever it is, make sure you let your local editor or producer know what's going on. It could be that you can develop a strong relationship there. Collaborations can be another really good way of making your effort go further. So this is done formally or technically through Instagram, where you would jointly publish something. But you can also do it in other ways, where on other channels, where you work with other organizations to both put out the same piece of content and perhaps direct back to your page or website. Great way of taking advantage of each other's audiences, especially if it's an aligned organization or individual. If you're a registered charity, the Google Ad Grant is an absolute must-do. This gets you several advantages, but the main one I would say is advertising budget to use in the Google Search Network. People are increasingly using generative AI for their content. Great, absolute time saver. Go with caution and make sure you're using it for a first draft and checking what it does really carefully. But yeah, lots of time saving and good idea generation to be got there. Sharing kits is another favorite of mine. So this is where you make it really easy for your audience to on-share your content. So a sharing kit would be something you'd use with your closer associates or aligned organizations, your friends out there, where you would give them, for example, here's an example social post that you could post about our activity. Here's a frame that you could put on your own picture. Here's a banner you could use, or here's some wording you could use to talk about our thing. It can make it really simple and straightforward for you to help guide how your content is shared. It makes it easy for the other person to do so. Asking for the share, great strategy, as long as you don't do it in every single post. And you can do it in a range of different ways. It could be like, tell us your experience, or, who needs to hear this, or, a range of different kind of phrasing you could use to get your content engaged with and shared by more people. We're on to the final stretch now, learning from your results. This is absolutely critical, because what works for Bike Auckland isn't going to be exactly the same as what works for you and your audience. So if there's one thing I could persuade you to do, it's really think about how can you learn from the results that you're getting, and what could you change as a result of that. So take a moment to think about what you're doing today to evaluate what's working. Is it formal? Is it informal? Is it just that you happen to be completely close to your social media and you're seeing the results and kind of using those as you go? Or do you keep a spreadsheet? Do you have tools for recording with regularity? Do you find it onerous? Do you find it easy? These are all good questions to ask yourself. The number one question that I like to ask is, what measures will give you the confidence to act? That's really important, because if you're recording something and putting effort into recording something, but it's never going to give you the confidence to make any changes, then it's a waste of your time. Now, there are measures that are easier to record, and there are measures that are harder to record. I like to divide them into outputs and outcomes. So outputs are things that you have direct control over. This is the stuff that you do. So typical output measures would be things like, how many media releases did you put out? How many social media posts did you publish? How many events did you run? Outcomes are the downstream impact of those. So they would be things like your estimated PR reach. And there are different techniques that you can Google for how to estimate your PR reach. It might be how many social media interactions or reach that you get. And that's something that you need to go into the back end of your social media channels to find out. It might be how many people show up to your events. It might be how satisfied did they rate you with those events. Now, as you can tell, most of these outcomes are a bit more effort to record, and some of them may have a cost attached to recording them. For example, running surveys and things can have a cost attached to it. So you need to choose carefully what's actually going to help you and really deliver value for you in terms of how much time and effort you put into it. Whatever you choose as your preferred metrics, make sure you write down how exactly you get them, so that if you're off sick or on holiday or something, someone else is doing it, they do it the same way. This is something I've seen trip people up again and again, where someone else takes over a role and can't get the numbers that the previous person did. So make sure you document how to get to them. Define how frequently you're going to do this. I would argue that recording something weekly is a waste of time, because you're probably not going to act. You're probably not going to be looking at results every week and going, oh, what can we change? It might be more of a monthly or even a quarterly kind of thing. And try and keep them consistent. Obviously, there'll be times when you do need to add something new in or tweak something so it works better for you, and that's fine. But in general, you can learn more if you've got a bit of a longer trend to compare with. It's time for you to write down your action plan. You may have jotted down a few things that you want to try as you went through, and that's fantastic. You may have a great piece of content that you've created and you're ready to publish. Great. I want you to write down one quick win action and one bigger challenge. So something that feels like a bit of a stretch for you. Write them down so you can put them somewhere where you'll see them. And whenever day-to-day gets in the way, you'll still remember what you were trying to achieve. I would love to hear what actions you're planning to do and what results you get from them. What's been effective for you, and what have you enjoyed most about this presentation? You can get in touch with me on sue@bikeauckland.org.nz, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have a great day.